Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is a take two. Josh and I, it's deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra once said. We just did our own intro. We had our chat going. We thought we were live. We weren't live. So my apologies for making
I
everybody.
said a lot of amazing things already. There's crazy stuff happening,
It,
and you'll never know what's going on.
it might be lost forever. I hope maybe we can go back and cover some of that same ground again.
I can't recall. My memory is very short, so I can't really recall what we did for that last 3 minutes, but
That's awesome.
in depth.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We've got Josh McFaddin on the season finale of Ion Live. I'm excited. Josh is a guest that I first met at the Fargo Ice Show several years ago,
Yes.
and I think everybody who's anybody in the industry knows a little bit about what you do. But like I said, I think we're gonna dive in and maybe help you remember even some of the other things that you forgot that you do.
Yeah, that might be actually super helpful.
Yeah, but I don't want to add to your to-do list, so we'll keep it
I
tame.
won't be taking notes. It's fine.
Okay, good to hear it. So for those of the uninitiated, Josh on Instagram can be counted on to share some really sweet photos. A lot of times of food, most times of fish, and when the fish is the food, those are some of my favorite shots of yours, definitely of all time. So congrats on the photography. Is that kind of how you started out?
Started out what?
Well,
Like,
as far as the fishing
like,
business is concerned, is that kind of the way you broke into the industry a little bit, or not necessarily?
not necessarily. I mean, photography's always been, how should I say, an assistant in a lot of ways.
Gotcha.
But I guess I don't know. I've been hunting and fishing since I could breathe, and then when I was younger, I got into photography, like late teens, maybe.
Okay.
Started out with junky gear like everybody else, and I mean, some people start out with really nice gear these days, which is crazy. But just learned the basics through trial and error, and picked up a digital camera that I knew I could shoot endless photos with for free, and load them onto my little Mac. I had this little Mac Mini, the first one that came out with, which was a super sweet computer, by the way. And this is a long time ago now. And yeah, I'd upload that like 128 megabyte photo stick that it came with.
What's a
And
megabyte?
crazy. Crazy. But back then, man, like 2 megapixels, you could rock 2 or 5. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't many. And
Yeah.
you could rock out a lot of shots with that little camera. And yeah, I would just take shots of everything and screw up a ton because I could afford them. And then yeah, I just kind of learned my way through it. I didn't know, this may not be your field of lingo, but photographers will understand. But I had no idea what ISO was until, man, probably in my late 20s. I just picked up a camera and twisted the dials, and I knew that this one made it lighter, this one made it darker, this one made it a little more grainy, this one made it less grainy,
Yeah.
and figured it out as I went. So I'd get thrown in these conversations with photographers all the time, and they'd be like, "Oh, what did you shoot that shot at, or what frame
What was
rate?"
your exposure, right? Yeah.
I have no idea. I just took it and hit the dial a lot while I was taking multiple shots. And so, yeah, I started doing a lot of that and just taking random shots. And then I had started a business building furniture, and I used my photography there to sort of help that business because Instagram sort of became a thing.
Yeah.
And I grew that locally with just taking photos and throwing them on Instagram. And at the same time, I was, independent and spending a lot more time fishing because that's kind of why I wanted to work for myself. I could go fish on Tuesday and Thursday if I felt like it,
Yeah.
and really enjoyed that. So I did more of that and took photos of fish. And then that led into a whole bunch of other things. I started a small little local outdoor magazine, and that didn't last too long before I started taking photos for more corporate gigs, and then dropped the furniture business and went straight into the media side in the outdoor space. And that was kind of it.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. Like I said, that was my introduction to you, but getting to know you a little bit over the years and just seeing how you interact with other brands, a lot of the stuff you do. A man of many talents. And again, for those of you just joining us, we've got Josh McFaddin on for the Ion Live finale of the year. Any questions? Anything you want us to ping Josh about in the comment section, light us up. We'll make sure to pose.
We're answering any question tonight.
Only the most challenging, deeply personal, and otherwise controversial questions are the ones.
Go crazy. Don't go too controversial. We'll get crazy.
That sounds
crazy
good.
Deep. Yeah.
Like I said, I met Josh at the Fargo Ice Show, and I think you were working with Frostbite and a couple other folks along the same time. But around about that same time, Catch and Cook came out, and if you guys haven't spent much time in Catch and Cook circles, I tell you what, the stuff, it's almost addictive. So my kids love the crunchy, like that's kind of their favorite, and yeah, it is the OG, and they prefer it. They kind of complain if it's not that. They know it's not that right away if we cook with anything else for fish. Nice. So you've got a good product. Tell me a little bit about Catch and Cook, maybe the evolution, how you got there.
Yeah. So first, I didn't realize there were Catch and Cook circles. That's great to hear.
Yes.
And I also not super impressed that you're feeding your kids other things, but it happens.
I know.
What was the main question I was supposed to answer?
I wanted to hear how Catch and Cook became a thing for you. And you're partnering with Jay on this, right?
Yeah. So Jay Siemens, beautiful human being. He and I co-own that. And it started like all of the best and greatest conversations in the world inside an ice shack.
Oh, perfect.
And we were doing a little fishing and filming for one of his videos back in the day. And I don't know if it was a super successful video, but it was a video for sure. And we just started chit-chatting. I'm sure that conversation is on film somewhere. He'll have to do some digging one day and dig it up. But we were talking about just ideas, and in the YouTube space, he's made an amazing career in that space for himself, and it's awesome to watch. And he at that time, he was trying to model different things that he was doing, I guess, after some of the bigger YouTubers. You always have the people who are successful in the space and you look up to them, and had the conversation of how they leverage their audiences. Not that you need to, but leverage the audience in a way to just give them something that you're passionate about, right? And share it.
Yeah.
But what could that possibly be? So he thought a product of some sort. I can't remember how the conversation fully went, but I had this coating mix that I had been making for a long time in my kitchen, and there wasn't any sort of formula to it. I knew that I would put certain things in it and then mix it up every now and then. So we thought maybe that could be a thing, like potentially. So in short order, even maybe in that shack, we were brainstorming potential names. And at that time, and still today, every second or third outdoor video that you would see on YouTube would say, I caught a raccoon, brackets, Catch and Cook, or I stumbled across a crocodile, brackets, Catch and Cook.
Right.
And it just sort of hit us like, dang, Catch and Cook is pretty catchy.
Yeah.
And it's all over the place already, but somebody must own that space for sure. So we looked into it and nobody owned that space. And we found the web domains right away and hopped on those. And, I think Jay was on his computer one night while we were chit-chatting, and he's got his credit card out and he's just like, domain ownership now, buy. And we felt like we had something, and there was just so much good spirit behind it at the time. And it was silly, right? Like, we're putting flour in a bag, but it was more than that. And I had run businesses before where I was really hands-on. Jay had been doing really hands-on work. And we wanted to have a business that we could outsource as much as possible, but breathe a lot of creative into. So we started working with a mill actually in Minnesota to start, and got some packaging made up and developed by a friend who was a designer, and got some packaging, had them fill our packaging with our with our recipe that I eventually had to formulate.
Yeah.
And then we jumped through all of the hoops with the government trying to get, an official recipe made. Like the ingredient list on the back of a package isn't just ingredients. It's formulated in a very specific way. And you legally have to, specify which ingredients are which. Some you don't. And in, Canada versus the US, garlic is one of those things where I think in Canada, it can just be bundled into spices. But in US, our packaging says garlic specifically. So there's all these weird little rules. And even the nutritional facts tables are different. So we didn't even know that was the thing. So we worked with a nutritionist and foodie person who's like a developer, and worked with them in the beginning, someone that I knew and had some connections with. And the whole thing snowballed amazingly well through just connections, right? Like just knowing great people over the years and maintaining those relationships and picking up the phone and saying, hey, could you help us with this? Can you help us with that? And we learned a lot in a short amount of time. But anyhow, we did our first run, threw it up online, built a pretty basic Shopify site. I'd stayed up numerous nights in a row, just making sure that things kind of worked.
Yeah.
And threw it live, and we sold out that day. Like by the next morning, I think it was sold out. And we just thought, man, this is kind of neat and interesting. And no one was doing anything different in the fish coating space, right? Like there were all your standard brands and a lot of mom and pop, kind of like farmers market style brands, things. But we wanted to make something that we could potentially take nationwide, and had our sights on that. And then, years down the road now, I think that conversation likely happened about 6 or 7 years ago. And it took a year or two before we even had a product, and then started to grow it slowly. When we went through long periods of time where we didn't have product because it would sell out right away. And that was just great. Like it was super encouraging and lit the fire for sure. And it just turned into what it is now. Like we've got a full-time CEO. We call him the catch and cook officer. So he's a CCO, and just a wicked guy. His name is Peter Tully. He's been in the outdoor industry for a very long time, and working with Cabela's for a very long time, and just knows everything. He knows how to build a spreadsheet, which Jay and I have no clue how to do. I don't even know how to read a spreadsheet. So it's unbelievable. And he's just really helped transform the business over the past, few months. I think he came on last November, and we've got a Canadian and a US corp, and we're selling through a bunch of stores through the Midwest. We're Canada wide now, and just focusing on growing more through the US and getting our content a little more dialed, and just bringing the brand to a new level. Like every year, it's just sort of, hey, what's our target? What do we want to think about and focus on, and bring new products out. So we're working on new products behind the scenes constantly. And that's it. It's just kind of a fun passion project that's turned into something that's bigger than we ever expected, but it's still a fun little side passion project, right?
Yeah, no, I was immediately captured by the branding, the catch and cook, right? Like I thought, oh, that's crafty. That is what's going on today. It's what's very popular. And Jay sent me a package, and I got a couple of the different flavors. And the tough part with fish mix that I've always found, I've been in a million fish camps just like you have. We've eaten more than our fair share of fried fish. And traditionally, if you weren't making your own, you would always have to fight this deal where it's like, okay, whatever I find at the store, you're going to be let down compared to what you can do typically on your own. This, I will say, unpaid endorsement. This is the first fish mix I've ever tried where I didn't feel like I had to sacrifice. Like, it's like, hey, this can be convenient. And now it is convenient because it is a lot of places down here in Minnesota. Like it's in Shields, it's in Cabela's, I believe. It's in most of the places that you would expect it to be. And so I'm not let down if I don't make my own. So that's congrats. Awesome. You guys did awesome.
I think a lot of folks like to make their own still and put cornflakes and whatever in their mix, and that's great. Right. Like we encourage that, and we encourage people to do that with our products too. It's just a different mix, and it has a different flavor profile than what you're typically used to. And we try really hard to educate on the back of the package, even with proper oil temperature, proper coating methods.
Oh,
And if you follow those instructions to a T, you'll have a really good, nice
something that's
fish
tasty.
product. Yeah.
Hit us with your catch and cook hacks for your favorite. Do you mix and match bags? Do you add any special seasonings at the end, like a sprinkle of something? Do you have? You're smiling because there is probably some Josh McFaddin unspoken secrets that maybe they have to remain unspoken. But I'd be interested to hear if you do anything different or mix several kinds together on your own.
Yeah. So I mean, I hear quite a few people that like to mix the original and the spicy. They have a fairly similar flavor profile, but I think it waters down the heat a little bit. I like the heat, so I typically keep it level, and I don't necessarily mix and match too much when it comes to our blends. But yeah, I like there's a few special ingredients that most people do not have in their cabinets, but you can buy them at bulk stores or online, and or different Middle Eastern grocery stores and whatnot. But a few things that come to mind that I really like to use. One, sumac. So sumac grows all through your guys' region and all the way up through Ontario and into Manitoba. It's wild all over the place. Beautiful citrusy, fruity sort of vibe going on. And if you dust a little bit of that on the fish or meat or whatever it is, once it comes out of the fryer, it adds something really special. So I like to put sumac in a lot of things. There's another seasoning it's a Middle Eastern seasoning called za'atar. It's like Z or Zaatar. And it also has sumac in it, but it usually has sesame seeds and whatnot too. So it has a little more of an earthy vibe, but still that citrus punch. I just love that citrus profile. And I think a lot of people do too, because our lemon pepper flavor has been going nuts. It's our
very
top
popular
for sure.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. It's usually like if there's any other hacks, the big ones are hot oil and making sure that you can maintain that over 350 degrees Fahrenheit when you're cooking. Most people, don't necessarily realize that when you throw things in that hot oil, even if you're at 375 or 400, it drops like crazy.
Right.
And then to get that back up, that recovery time can take a while and make your fish soggy. So if you can just keep it a little hotter, not too hot, but a little hotter, don't go above 400, but keep it a little hotter, and then you'll end up with a crispier product. Double frying also helps a lot. So if you fry it until it's almost crispy, pull it out, let it rest for a minute or two, and then drop it back into the hot oil once it's had time to recover. That'll crisp it up really quick. And that's a really fine trick. And another one is just drying. Most people, and I've done it before, they take the paper plate or the pan, layer it with paper towels, and put the fish on that right from the hot oil. So what you do when you do that is you create an enclosed environment where that steam that's inside the fish is now trying to steam out through your crispy coating, and it gets soggy right away. Yeah. So a wire rack goes a long way. You could pick up 100%. A wire rack at Dollar General for $1 and throw it on a sheet pan, put your fish on top, and it'll stay crispy until the last bite. So those are some like little tricks that I like to do on a regular basis, just because I enjoy food experiences and I don't want soggy fish.
That wire rack thing is a super hack. And especially if you're cooking multiple batches of fish, to your point about keeping the oil hot, having an oven at like 170, something like that, where you can keep them warm, keep them dry, not sogging up, keep them crispy. Like all these things make a big difference in the final product. And it's so hard to watch all the effort people put into cleaning fish and maybe bleeding them, doing a good job getting out fin bones and things, breading it properly, frying it right. And then that step, you're like, oh, you just ruined it.
I know, kind of spoiled it. But you can't really expect, and I've learned this over the years in the cooking space, you can't expect just everyone to know, especially your average outdoors guy. You can't expect them to have kitchen skills, right? So it's a matter of just picking up those little tricks along the way and refining your process, and just dialing it in for a better tasting experience when you're on the plate.
I love it. We'll get back to food. I know we will. Well, I know that we'll steer away and then come right back. But I wanted to ask you a little bit I was just up the Lake of the Woods. We just took snowmobiles into Canada on the Lake of the Woods side there.
Nice.
Got a lot of crappies, got some walleyes, like we talked about in the original intro that wasn't live apparently. It's still winter up there. It's really, really winter up there. There's really thick ice.
Super thick ice.
I had my eye on, and I had the 12-inch extension and barely got through in places.
Right. Yeah, I've been using my 18-inch extension now, and it's close. Really, really close. Like there's a few spots when you get close to ice ridges and whatnot where you're just never getting through. Right. But the average sheet thickness is it's thick. Like it's got to be 5 feet, right? Like I'm 6'3" and I'm holding the auger over my head or like face level when I start to drill, and you're just clearing that hole a million times, and it's pretty crazy. But it's I mean we got to do a little auger talk.
Yeah.
But it's just unbelievable how effortless, and I stop to think about it every time I'm out on the ice, and how effortless it is to pop a hole with an electric auger that knows what it's doing and has the power, and like a good sharp set of blades goes a long way too. And on Lake Winnipeg, there's a lot of dirty ice that can dull those up pretty quick. But man, it's unbelievable how easy it is to drill a hole. And last weekend, for the first time in a very long time, I try not to fish too close to other people. And we were fishing within earshot, at least, of a couple little groups. And someone started up a gas auger, and I actually jumped. It was so calm and peaceful. And there's people drilling holes all over the place, but you'd never know. Or you might hear that little ice grinding sound.
Right.
But somebody started up a gas auger, and it was unbelievable how abrasive it was. And it sort of ruined the experience of being outside. Like there's seagulls flying by and eagles, and everything's making noises, and the outdoors was happy until that auger started up. And I felt it through my spine. And it was crazy. And I do not miss those fumes in the ice shack on those days up here, especially when it's 10,000 below and you don't want to drill your holes first before setting up the shack. I used to drill inside the shack with a gas unit, and you'd be high for hours after that.
Oh yeah. You clear out the house, air it out.
So bad. Yeah.
Brutal. And then, the mixing gas, making sure you've got high quality, non-oxygenated gas, the right mix with the right fuel. And we'd make like a cocktail that had sea foam in it, just so these things would start well. And even then, you deal with things like a gas line getting caught on a piece of gear and disconnecting. You just fight and fight and fight that. Nowadays, I don't think people that are kind of new to the sport really understand how nice it is to use something like that, right?
It is. Yeah. I don't think it's, I still get a lot of questions about, and less now, but you still get them about the, reliability of a battery.
Yeah.
And I just think, man, do you not remember or know how useless gasoline is in a combustion engine in 30 below Celsius? Like that's insanity. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So the battery, you keep it in the truck or you keep it in the shack, and you're not moving around too much when it's that cold anyhow. You're sort of popping your holes and setting up for the day. And it's brainless. Like it's so easy, and it just works. You turn it on and it works, and you're not having to pull start anything and throw your shoulder out. So it's the only way. And I'm very impressed and happy to see that the majority have picked it up. And you go out on the big lake now, and they're, for us, lots of people, you see lots of groups out, and you rarely hear a gas auger anymore.
Pretty rare.
It's really dominated the market for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Garrett Updike comments, couldn't agree more, best augers on the market. And then he brings up, or when they leak in the back of the truck.
Oh yeah. Brutal.
Then, like you said, it's not just high in the ice house; it's on the drive home too. If you're
not
a suburban or something.
And if you have an SUV or something where it's all inside and not in the box of a truck, it's just not a great experience.
Mark Tully, only thing I like to warm up on the ice is brisket. You're our guy, not two strokes. We agree.
Amazing.
In fierce agreement there. Yeah. Tell me a little bit. You mentioned clearing the hole when you're drilling with an extension. I bet there's a lot of guys in Minnesota, Wisconsin, especially the southern part of the ice belt. They don't even know how to do that or why to do that. When you're drilling thick ice, give us a little tutorial, man. What do you got to do? And I know it might sound like a beginner thing, but like I said, we don't do that much down here.
Yeah, so I still see it constantly. And my wife is actually going out. She was supposed to go today, but she's going out tomorrow with Mark Tully's wife. And she was asking me about the clearing the hole. And the biggest thing is when that auger flight disappears below the surface, you have to start clearing. When it's above, it's doing all of the work to push the ice up and out. So you don't have to clear the hole once if the flight is above the ice. The second you get into that top bit, the top third or whatever of the flight, and then into an extension, every 6 inches or so of ice packing on top of that flight while you're down 3 feet, then 4 feet, then 5 feet of ice is extremely hard to lift. So you start getting pack. 12 inches of pack on top of that flight is almost impossible to grab. So one of the nice features is if you made that mistake with a gas auger, you're probably losing a thumb. But yeah, you're jarring your arm and they have a lot more power than you have. The electrics, if you happen to jar it, it's nice because they will break, not break as in broken, but
right.
There's a break in the gear.
Yep.
They'll give out and they'll stop on you, which is awesome. So you won't hurt yourself. However, you can really grab onto it and pop it in reverse and it'll come back up the hole. So that's another just sweet little trick that I don't see a ton of people doing it, but I do it if I screw up and don't clear the hole as often, or if it gets slushy, that's pretty bad too. But yeah, I like to just make sure that I clear it consistently, and your shoulders hurt at the end of the day for sure. But it's just part of the job up here.
Yeah, no, it's a good tip. Definitely when he says clearing the hole, it's literally just as simple as picking the thing up and letting some of those chips come out. You know it when it happens to somebody else because they're typically down close to the ice. They haven't cleared it. And if they haven't figured out that reverse trick that you just said, they're playing tug of war with their face pretty close to the ice sheet.
Oh yeah.
Bent over and struggling, right?
Yeah, if you're not limber, you'll pull some things.
Jake Lepke's got a shout out from Mr. McFaddin. We also have an awesome comment from Darren, who is Detro to most of us, sturgeon aficionado of epic proportions. Seems like snack food items have been a great way for some YouTube personalities to subsidize their income. Mr. Beast Candy, Flair's Jerky, Jay and Josh Seasoned Flour. So pretty good company there, actually, right?
Yeah, that is true. That I didn't even think of it that way. But the Logan Paul as well. I think he's doing. Is it Logan Paul or Mr. Beast doing the? Logan Paul obviously has the electrolytes, but I guess Mr. Beast is doing the snack boxes. But they did something in tandem with Prime there at some point. But yeah, the snack boxes and the chocolates, and I like that those are sort of geared towards a little more healthy than what's on the market, or traditionally on the market. That's always nice too. And we snack a lot as outdoors folk, and it's always nice to have a couple of healthy options to dig into.
100%. Yeah, I knew we'd get back to food, and we've talked about fish and fish mix and food on its own. I see in the background you could easily make me an Aperol spritz, among other things. So that's pretty.
We've got a couple bootlegged bottles and Bareface. I don't think you guys have that there, but it's a nice whiskey. I'm a gin guy too, so I haven't had a lot to drink over the past few months, but there's some bottles here that are begging for a poppin'. And we've got my spice collection here, at least a very small portion of it.
I bet spices.
Coffee machine.
I bet spices are like an addiction to you, aren't they?
Yeah, it's not good because I get grief from my girls at home for just having too many bags of like drug baggies of things that I've made up just hanging out in the pantry.
Sure.
And it gets to be a little too much because I forget to label them and we don't know what's in it. It's going to be good, but it might have mushroom powder in it, which is, may not need, or you may not want to eat that raw. So sometimes it's like use with caution and make sure you're putting it on something you're cooking. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, I like it and I like just tasting different flavors. So every meal has a different dusting of something on it in this house.
So judging from your photography, your prowess in and around the kitchen, given what I've seen, just knowing a little bit about you and how technical you like to cook. I mean, you like to push the boundaries for what you'd consider your average sportsman cooking fish out on the ice. What is your guilt-free, easy cooking on the ice kind of meal? Like, this isn't going all out. We're not dressing to impress. You're just kind of trying to provide something tasty, quick, relatively easy. Is there such a thing? Because it's hard. I know, like, the more effort and work you put into it, the better the results typically, right?
Yeah, I think it's just preparation. In the set of videos that I did with Eskimo this past winter for Shanny Snacks, you'll see that there's a lot of prep work that goes into those things. And I've got little containers, whatever, they're just plastic containers. And I'll eat either the morning of or the night before, just pack a bunch of little chopped things and throw them in containers, put them in the cooler, and you can bring protein with you or catch fish and throw it in the mix. So one of them that I actually really like that's super easy, and you could do it over a Mr. Heater cooker or you could do it over any kind of gas burner, and a pan. I'll bring a wok or something with me, and making fried rice. Fried rice is so easy to make and it's delicious. So you really just need a little bit of soy sauce, and I like sesame oil in there. So I pack a couple little bottles and a bit of cilantro, parsley, chopped green onions, scallions and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you can sear your fish in a little bit of oil, get it cooked, and then start throwing your ingredients in with some leftover rice, or you can make rice the night before and bring it with you. And it comes together so fast and easy. Crack a couple eggs in there and you've got a wicked fish fried rice, and it takes minutes to make. And it's such a hearty meal to eat out on the ice. It's unbelievable. And it's so much easier than doing deep fried fish with fries or something like that. Right. That's a little bit to do. And there's
oil, fire, special utensils, thermometers, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
And you can even go as far as just prepping the whole thing the night before and then just warming it up on the ice too, and just giving it that hot sear flash in the pan. And that's a good one. You can toss your veggies. I really like peas in there, so you can throw peas and a little bit of corn in there, and it gives it that extra pop too.
That's awesome. That's a great one for out on the ice. To your point about something that's like ripping hot and like really nutritious, and like just that would be great feel good food out on the ice.
Warm, carby, salty, sort of does all of it.
All of the best things. So if that is an easy meal for you, or one of the easier ones because of your secret weapon, your prep, right? What's a hard one? What when you go all out, or what's the hardest meal you've made out on the ice? What's all out for you out there?
Oh man, the hardest. Well, nothing's really too hard, I guess. But last winter, I went out with a group of guys that I know well, my hunting group, and my cousin's a part of that group, and then invited a buddy along, and I hauled out my trailer and put my pizza oven on top of it. So I had the flat deck trailer with the pizza oven going, and we cooked all sorts of things, but I had butchered a pig maybe a month prior and brought like the full rib cage. We're talking like extra XL long ribs, and brought that out, threw it in a pan in the wood fired oven. So it's like smells nice and smoky and aromatic all day, and let that rip in there while we were throwing sausages in, something that could cook a little faster in between. So just some like nice deer sausages. And yeah, so that's probably, you know how long ribs take. Like you're looking at 3+ hours to get a nice rib. Yeah. And they were just unbelievable. Like that's a special thing to have on the ice. And if you have a somewhat portable pizza oven. I had to disassemble the thing and put it back together on the trailer and get it out there. But man, it's that's a fun way to cook, but probably more difficult and challenging because you need all of the tools to do so.
Oh yeah, that's at that point you're kind of hauling out a food trailer, really. I mean, it's the pizza oven on the trailer. Plus,
Yeah,
well, you got to butcher your own hog, or at least get some really good ribs.
find some crazy ribs. Yeah, you can't buy those ribs in the store. That's for sure.
No kidding. That's awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, I think everybody, whether you're out on the ice or at home, has really benefited from the YouTube generation, Food Network, all these different ways to help us cook better with just a little bit of information. But I really appreciated that hack about prep because I've done it myself. If I am prepped and ready with all of the things where they need to be with the right ingredients ready, it's more about assembly. I mean, there's a little bit of cooking involved, but a lot of it's just like putting it together at the right time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just if you're setting up and getting your gear ready the night before anyhow, it's really not that much extra effort to go in the kitchen, and time spent in the kitchen really helps with that prep too, right? Like hours with a knife in your hand and knowing how to cut things and do it efficiently is super helpful. But just making sure you have those containers to bring everything along. Like I don't really, aside from Ziploc bags or something, I don't really have a ton of things to put food into, but portion containers. So the same things you'd get at a Chinese restaurant that they put your wonton soup in, you can buy those at food suppliers for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And if you have a stack of those, you can buy them in stacks of 50 or 100 and keep those around, and you can just throw portions of anything into those and bring it along with you on the ice, and it's quite efficient.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. And don't skimp on the special little extras, the thing that gives you the flair, right? Like fresh herbs, obviously, the citrus, fresh, right? If you've got that way of doing it, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, if you want to do a fish fry as well on the ice, I have to promote the fish dust, right?
Yeah.
A really easy way to do it is just shallow fry, and you can get the same results. You'll probably have to flip the fish, and you use a lot less oil to do so. But get yourself a nice flat pan, whether it's stainless or cast iron, and you can heat that up pretty efficiently. Cast iron's awesome because it just retains so much heat. And shallow fry in just an inch of oil and flip it a few times. You're not doing 10 pounds of walleye fillets in there, but if you want to have a snack for you and the shack next door, you can easily fire out a decent meal with that.
Speaking of the shack next door, I bet you are popular on ice. Do people see you coming and immediately think they're going to get fed, or how does that work?
I feel so it happens, yeah. But part of one of the reasons why I fish alone or away from the crowds often, and not in an arrogant way. It's just I somewhat like my peace and quiet sometimes too. But I love people, so never be afraid of talking to me. But
that's a perfect segue for this next comment. You love people, but maybe not people across the border as much as you once did. Maybe not. Not to get political, Darren Troseth asked, but are there any new tariffs on seasoning or food items? On a side note, it's a great time for U.S. folks to book a Canadian trip, dollar value.
I made a mental note before we got on to make the joke about wanting to talk about politics out of the gate, and I forgot. But which was obviously a joke.
Right.
Yeah, so how do we do this without getting political? So I mean, the harsh reality of it is still love every human being that's ever existed. Maybe a couple people that are questionable, but most people, I love them, and especially US based folks. And I mean, I do a lot of work with Hunt Fish Manitoba, Travel Manitoba, and we love the folks that come here and enjoy our natural resources in a big way. And so that's always something, yeah, it's always love all around. And when it comes to the tariffs, it's been so touch and go. So originally it looked like we'd be subject to them. About 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we had a big shipment going from Toronto to Minnesota and Minneapolis, where our warehouse is. And that could have been subject to tariffs because that The day it went across the border, that night, the tariffs came into play, but they were only in play for a day or 2 or 3, like very short window.
Sure.
So we saved a lot of money by getting them across the border quickly. And we're pretty fortunate to not get taxed on it, essentially. And then those tariffs went away. And then there's certain levels of tariffs, I think, that are still in play, where if there's an amount of sugar over a certain percentage value that is within your product, you'll get tariffed on it. Fortunately, we don't put any sugar in our coating. Some of our spices have a small amount of sugar in them, but not enough to really get dinged with tariffs. So right now we're safe, and that's great because it's great for our business, and we can keep on providing our products to the US right now with our Canadian production facility. And we can get it across the line without having to really raise our prices. That at the end of the day, it would look like a price increase to the consumer.
Right.
So we don't want that. And we just want everyone to be able to, pick it up and enjoy it. So no politics necessary, I guess, in that conversation.
No,
just
that's good.
Truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's not steel. It's not aluminum. It's not some of these other consumer items that we often enjoy as outdoors people, which are going to be subject to some of that the heavier tariffs. So certain things will go up quite a bit if you're a sportsman. It's just kind of the reality of it, right?
It is the reality, and you just have to roll with the punches, right? Like, there's no reason to really get worked up over too many things. And at the end of the day, over the past 5 years, we've seen an increase in everything. Our fuel's gone up, our groceries have gone up, right? Like, everything's getting more expensive, and it's just kind of what it is. You either have to live within your means or find a way to make a little extra scratch. And
even more reason to catch your own fish, cook it well,
right,
and enjoy restaurants and going out to eat when you can. But cooking nicely for yourself at home it's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding. I get a lot of pleasure just doing that. And the people that you care for, the people that you love, what better way to show them that than to really just put a lot of effort, heart and soul into what you cook, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Feed the people around you, and spiritually and physically. And you'll reap the rewards from that for sure.
I was talking to a buddy of mine who's also a mutual buddy of yours about eel pout. You maybe know who this is or where this is going. But you're talking about feed the people around you. Jason Rylander was in a fish camp with you not too long ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, and he raved about Josh McFaddin being one of his favorite human beings. And by the way, you tend to eat pretty well when you're with Josh, so there's what's not to like. So,
I mean, I think I'm pretty likable, but
exactly.
Jason's an awesome dude, and we're aligned in a lot of ways, and he's just a great human being. And the fact that he's got this love and passion for pout definitely ignited a heightened passion for myself. And I used to catch him as a kid, and we would see them left out on the ice from other anglers. And we didn't even have this might be getting political. All I'll say is that there wasn't actually a limit on eel pout here for some time, and I think they introduced that more recently just to give them some sort of attention. I think that's been really important. And I love all of the fish that are not celebrated, right? Like drum are my favorite thing on the planet. I think they're beautiful, and they're just like, our spirits are connected for sure in some way. And I feel bad eating them, but I love eating them. So it's one of those things where it's almost like a National Geographic documentary every time I eat a drum, because I have to, lay it down on its side and thank you for offering its life and do the whole ceremony. And then I eat the heck out of it because it's delicious and has an amazing texture. But I was talking with people today about cooking drum. And doing a beer battered drum is, oh man, if you've been to a fish stand and got like the beer battered cod before and you think that's good, drum is on a whole other level. Like it's the texture is just unbelievable, and it's not fishy, but it has a fish flavor to it that, due to their oils that they have, right? Like you look at a walleye is such a lean fish. They don't really hold any fat. They hold a little bit in their bellies when they're going through spawning season and whatnot, and they lose it pretty quickly, but you're not actually consuming that fat. And drum have a lot of deposits in places, but they have the intermuscular fat, like kind of like a salmon does, right? And that fat just adds so much flavor and lends to the juiciness. You could overcook drum and it'll still be juicy. So it's really cool, and it's elevated. If walleye is the one everyone loves and it's just kind of bland vanilla flavor profile, drum just kicks it up another notch and adds way more texture and heightened flavor profile in a big way. And it's just, man, they're so good. Don't let me talk too much about drum because I'll keep.
Well, I love it because, to be honest, I have heard this from a few other people, but nobody ever really crows that very loudly because they just tend not to enjoy a favorable place amongst anglers stateside, especially. And I think a lot of that is the pike syndrome too, where you're trolling, you're jigging, and you feel this fish hit, you set the hook, it's awesome, you think it's a trophy walleye, and it ends up being a big drum or a pike or a bass.
Yeah. But back to me saying how you shouldn't really get too upset about stuff.
Yeah, right. Right.
It's the best. I get so excited catching a drum because I love the fight. I target them specifically, and I just want to look at them. I think they're the coolest looking things, and they look like a saltwater fish, and they're in our lakes mixed in with walleyes and pike and catfish and perch. And I don't know, just such a huge fan. Everyone's unique. There's those really cool silver ones that have a bit of a blue shimmer and a purple shimmer to them.
Yeah.
Dark yellow ones are the golden ones. And they're just, I love catching a golden drum. And yeah, it's just, it's a special fish. And the way that I've started over the years targeting them on the lake, everyone catches them by accident, right? No one's targeting drum for any good reason.
Right.
And then Aaron Weeb did an amazing video a number of years ago now where he was in current catching them with cranks or jerk baits or whatever. And that was like really cool. That was a bit of a spectacle, and no one targets them in that way. And now for me, it's just moving baits, top water. I've had them snap up top water baits before. And when you spend enough time on the water, which it's a major guilty pleasure. I spend too much time targeting them in the summer. And a lot of the time I'll be like on the kayak or in waders and I'm in the water with them. Mm-hmm. You just learn so much about where they are and what they do and what they want to forage. And it's just so cool. So different than walleyes. Well, everyone knows where walleyes are kind of going to be and what they like to hang out around.
Sure.
Drum are just a little bit different. So it adds just a fun element to the fishing experience. And when you know that you can catch them on moving baits, most people here catch them passively when they're fishing for something else. And it'll often be a dead bait sitting on bottom, whether it's on a jig or using a pickerel rig, which I don't know if you guys have pickerel rigs, but like a crappie rig as well, where it's like a double drop shot, basically.
Spreader, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So cast it out, leave it on bottom with some dead bait on it, and they'll just pick it up. And it's the hassle that people have with them here is that they'll grab that minnow and swallow the hook immediately. They're just such fast eaters.
Effective eaters, yeah.
So they'll just swallow it immediately. So now you have this drum that you don't want to keep, and it's got a hook in the back of its throat, and you'll kill it before you get the hook out. So for me, it's just I don't think that that's a wholesome way to target them or fish for them at all.
Right.
And
especially when they eat lures as well as they do, they eat a jig and plastic extremely well too.
Swim baits and spoons, even some of my favorite ways to catch them. And they, like you had said, extremely effective hunters and eaters.
Yeah.
And they'll feel that from a long way away. And I think that they have a heightened vibe on what's going around them in their surroundings more so than any other fish. And they'll lock in and just chase something and swallow it. So moving baits are definitely key, and it's so much more fun. Like it's like a bass on steroids, like crazy steroids that the Olympians get, like the good stuff.
The good stuff. Detro also pops in, says, at least down here, they're loaded with PFAS because they eat a lot of the mussels. And I think for better or worse, they do get a pretty bad reputation in our neck of the woods because they tend to hang out in a lot of the ag runoff areas, some of our lakes that are overbloomed with algae,
Right.
definitely the river and places like that. So that was an interesting point for Detro to reach out with. He also said, thanks for the tariff intro. That's real world stuff. He'll be at Shields tomorrow, grabbing a few bags of catch and cook for a
Awesome.
show of support. So
We appreciate
cool.
that. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Detro. Great comments too. Well, we've covered drum. We've covered a lot of ground. We've covered photography at the outset, food in general, but I think some of the things that we also know and love you for is your addition into 39 Hours, some of the other J productions.
Yeah, the Outpost and 39 Hours, and yeah, I mean, I love that side of things, and I don't do a ton of the entertainment side solo. So when I get to hop on some of these projects and just be a component, it's a great time. Like, I love planning for them and just thinking about where we're going to be, the strategy. I'm not a big like tournament guy or competitive person, so this is a nice way to do the competitive thing in a fun environment. And there's really nothing on the line, you know. I mean, for me, I don't care if I win or lose. I want to win, but I'm so happy either way. And I just want everyone to have a good time. And it's gone that way so far, where it's just a very encouraging environment. It's not an easy production to put on. I'm not even a part of that side of it, but I see what Jay goes through. What the viewers don't get to realize or appreciate for the most part is, like, you get a sweet product at the end of the day that's fun and entertaining. But to have all of those personalities in one place at the same time of year is extremely difficult. And you get someone like Taro, where you don't know if he'll get on the plane, and you're driving north tomorrow, kind of thing, right? So things like that, and not like Taro's the most amazing person in the world, but he's kind of all over the place, right? So it's like, and that's one person out of, you know, many that are on these productions, and it takes a lot of work. The camera guys are unbelievable, and they don't miss a catch. Like, if you've ever been a part of a shoot, or you ever think like, man, we should have taken pictures of that fish, those guys don't miss ever. So every fish that you're seeing on camera, we're catching more behind the scenes, and there's footage that they have to go through for months after we shoot, and they're just culling through good catches, but they can't make it into the show because it'd be 5 hours long,
right?
And they're just nailing everything, and they're the ones that are out there without gloves on their hands because they're dealing with, you know, finicky electronics, and they're there in the freezing cold and in the heat of the heat in the summer. And when it's pouring rain, they're making sure that all of your gear, even your microphones, are susceptible to damage when there's rain, right?
Well, yeah, for sure.
And they're just on it nonstop, changing batteries, swapping out your microphone, and it's unbelievable. It's like when you're in a boat with one of them, it's like being with a guide where you don't have to think, right? And like the guide experience blows my mind every time, because there's days where I don't touch a fish when there's a guide in the boat, and it feels so weird.
Yeah,
and then you don't have a guide in the boat, and something like the Outpost, where my hands have 30 Band-Aids on them from start to finish. Like, by the time I go home, I'm covered in cuts and sores and super glue all through all my hands. And it's like, man, the guide experience is pretty cool. And you get that premium experience having a good dialed camera guy in the boat, because every little thing they're, you know, figuring it out as you go, and taping something here and then pulling this cord and swapping that battery. And it's very, very cool to see. And they're professionals at it. So it's it's nice. It's something to look up to for sure.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I've been definitely on the benefiting end of camera guys that make us look better than we really are, and capture things in ways that you wouldn't have imagined seeing it, right? Different angles, odd takes where you're like, I don't know what this is. And then you see it and you're just like, wow, they know it's magic, right?
And with the right crew, like they know how to make you look cool, and they also know how to humble you and make you look pretty stupid.
Oh, sure,
And
there's some of that.
the entertainment value in that is so good.
Right.
That's really what makes those shows come together, right? You need a little bit of quirky behavior in there and some serious moments, and being able to dial that in from the filming all the way to the editing it's a talent that I definitely do not have.
Well, I've always said that so many of the fishing shows that we love to watch, we don't watch them because Aaron is showing me a new way to catch a lake trout, or Jay is talking about pike on the fly, as exciting as that is. Uh, I want to be behind the computer screen with Jay drinking Diet Mountain Dew and hanging out and telling stories. Like, and when you get that behind the scenes look and feel from character development, that's what makes it interesting. I think that's what you're getting at, because
Yeah,
I'm just happy that you're one of the characters there. That we get to know you a little better, right? That's the interesting part to me, anyway.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's fun. It's good, and we've been able to really enjoy watching those pieces as a family here. I've got 3 young girls, and they enjoy it, and their friends at school talk about it, which is kind of a weird one. But it's it's just neat. And I always admired the fact that before I was even working with Jay, he would always talk about how he loved making his videos because he's collecting all of these memories that he would likely forget. And I forget everything, right? Like I can't remember. I do so many things that I have to scroll through my phone to remember what I did. So I'm always taking pictures of stuff.
Right.
And it's amazing to look back over a year and see the endless amounts of cool things that you got to do. And so what Jay would always say is just, being able to collect those memories, and that was special to him. And now I really, really value that. And I was doing it somewhat with photos and photography for a long time, but seeing the video-based stuff and just having this collection of memories that you can go back and look upon, especially when you have a young family, it's really, really special.
Well, and I think knowing your prowess behind a camera, the problem is probably like I have with my boys. I've got lots of pictures of my boys, but not as many pictures of me with my boys. So
right,
when you get to be on the receiving end of that a little bit and seeing you interact with all of the friends that you have on screen, that really makes it a fun one, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. I don't have a ton of photos of me aside from like being in videos and stuff like that. Now, like, I mean, I do quite a few things where I'm a hand model or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's not a ton of photos, and it's like, that's kind of upsetting at some points where you look back and you're like, dang, I wish there were a few more photos of me with the kids and whatnot, but I don't have a photographer following me around. I'm the guy.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm not carrying a tripod around with me everywhere I hike to either. So
no. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. We have taken up an hour of your time. I feel like we could go another 2 or 3 hours and really dig deep easily. So I want to save that for Ion Live 2025-2026 season and edition. Catch up with you into your next ice year, kind of see how things are going, how the summer went. But appreciate you being you. Have learned a lot from you personally. Love the stuff that you do. Keep up the great work. And from myself and Josh McFaddin, this has been Ion Live, last one of the year, signing off. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Thanks, all.